You know, when you look up at the stars at night, they become far more interesting when you know what you're looking at. This is the Orion constellation, named after the giant super hunter of Greek mythology, the son of Poseidon. It is an area in the sky that has drawn quite a bit of attention from ancient people around the world. But why? Why is that? Not to mention the star series. There are monuments. You know, they just keep finding these pyramids everywhere. They're in the deserts, they're in the jungles, they're in the mountains, in the Arctic, in the oceans. They're all over the place. And when you look in Mexico, when you look in Egypt, you think, why would someone build these structures to mirror this constellation Orion? I mean, is this the answer to the question of who constructed them? Did you notice, folks, there are a lot of discoveries being made right now, and old tales of the ancients are coming back to life. What we used to call science fiction and ancient folklore seems to be making its way into our reality. So let us take a closer look at this constellation, these structures, the ancient Egyptians, and the beings they believe to be the gods of Orion.
You can't have that last name for fun. I told you that's not a fun name. That's a purpose-driven name.
Welcome to the GILCHRIST experience. We're about to discuss my favorite topic, ancient Egypt, and where we all come from, and where the gods are from, where early beginnings of time. I mean, we all talk about extraterrestrials, and you know, X-Files is one of my favorite television programs to watch. But we've all been here before. I mean, I've been talking about this for a long time, about the Dogons and how they have secrets of the universe that nobody can, you know, about stars, a star system. Leroy and I have done several shows on it, talking about the Dogons knowing secrets of the universe that nobody can see with a telescope, that they draw it in the sand and carvings in rocks. The secrets of the where we all come from. And today we have a special guest, Sister Kenya, or Professor Pearson from City College, a friend of Professor Jeffries, another colleague of ours that often shares his interest in the Dogons, because his wife, Rosalind Jeffries, spent some time with the Dogons. And I found out from this sister that
she's probably one of them.
How special she really is. I knew she was special, but anybody behind Jeffries lifting him up in the wind below, the wind beneath his wings, he should have been here today, but we'll get him back. But welcome to the show, sister. It's a pleasure having you. And my favorite topic, the Dogons, and you have all the knowledge that we need to listen to. But I thought I'd start off with a little curiosity about extraterrestrials and who built the pyramids. They had to be built from above because of the fact that the pyramids of Cheops is located in the center of the landmass of the Earth, 3/4 of the landmass being water. So it had to be from above.
Understood.
All right? So there's some doubt in my co-workers. Graham, when he gets here, he's going to be thrilled. Because we have doubting Thomases about extraterrestrial life. And I've tried to convince my fellow seekers about the knowledge of the Dogons having been imparted on them from extraterrestrials. So this is our subject matter today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a very special conversation, and it's a very important one, but truly the knowledge of the Dogons is for the awake, not for the sleeping.
Okay.
So when we were lulled to sleep 10,000 years ago and put in the unfortunate conditions of losing the motherland, and many of her greatness, we went to bed, we went to sleep, and we invited invaders into our minds, bodies, and our souls. And so the great knowledge will sleep within until you are allowed to find your purpose. And then when you find your purpose, that ship will come for you. The very ship that arrived to tell these amazing beings that it was Earth that needed to be inhabited, and that Earth needed to have principles, values, purposes. And in Earth, there would be fruit called children who could possibly seek a very unique path, because everything is about choice. That is why humans were created.
In this piece, they talk about the gods of Orion. Are they talking about Isis, Osar?
The gods of Orion, and the reason that they're using the stars is the very same reason that Kuta Kinte put his child up to the stars.
Okay.
Is because the knowledge comes from the universe.
Right.
And Orion's mystical system is based on the very profound individual star called Sirius,
Right.
right? Sirius is the very star, Sirius B, there's a Sirius A, they said there possibly a Sirius C. But,
Right.
but she anyway is a goddess, which is why as a goddess, she planted the seed of self in the mother. And that womb grew to be who we are. Of course, the title Dogon has many variations. People, as they do often when they are translating, give meaning to words. But the fact is, they are the title of knowledge. It is a quest for people to seek. You know, human life is a gift, correct? And if you're going to be human and be given a life and leave your parentage, you have to make choices between good and evil. And this is why our ancient Kemetic system constantly talks about the law of opposites, constantly. This is all Dogon complete knowledge, but in their perfection, these were perfect beings. We are now much less than perfect. Perfect beings had no problems with good or evil, for there was no evil left on the planets they had visited, and they did not come here to bring evil. They came to the planet Earth to bring purpose. And as their descendants, the Dogons, the seekers, were given the knowledge to hold, to cherish, to respond to, and to respect, so that when we fall asleep, there would be a few left across the entire globe with the official knowledge. And that would give purpose to every seeker. They would find their divine purpose and return to the mothership in time.
When did you find your calling as spiritual healer? I understand you have a long-time association with Brother Leroy.
Absolutely. In fact, the journey began with a man named Wayne.
Wayne Rice.
You can't forget Mr. Rice.
Well, I went to high school with Wayne.
Well, there you are.
There
You
you
see,
go.
you guys are a dynamic duo. But then again, of your generation, I'm not at all surprised, because in your generation, being born in the 50s would precede I call them the almighty 60s, right? Where there were 3 M's running around at the same time, Medgar, Martin, and King,
That's right.
All 3 of them were M's. And I always use this scenario when I'm educating. I say, if you take M and you turn it upside down, eventually you're going to get the letter W.
Right.
So in the era of the 60s, 50s, and 40s, the M's were being born. They were men who were going to carry extreme missions, because when you have a man, you better have a mission. And I had the pleasure of meeting Brother Bailey on his mission to help rest the spiritual being of Brother Wayne during his departure from this planet, because he had done his work, and his work was well done. And so I had met Wayne years before, and then I kind of met his brother, because I didn't know he had a brother, but he considered Mr. Baylor his blood brother.
Right.
Right. So as I learned that he had a blood brother and I had never seen him, and then of course on the day when we're getting ready to do his homegoing, I meet the man responsible for making that ceremony proper, respectful, and completely in the honor of God, and that was Brother Baylor here. And that's how we met.
Say a few words, Brother Bailey.
Well, first of all,
And
thank you again for being open to this discussion. The discussion about the Dogon is important from my vantage point perspective for black people to study the Dogon and to get the history of that group of people and know that the knowledge that they have, the Dogon have, is knowledge that black people had for millions of years.
right.
I did have the opportunity of speaking with Dr. Charles Finch, not speaking to him. He was on a radio show in Washington, D.C. yesterday, and I called in on the Dogon.
Yesterday. Okay.
What's our brother's name? I listen to him quite often. Wow, it's just not coming to me. But anyway, WOLDCnews.com, and you'll get the radio program that this brother, he has tremendous guests. Anyway, he had Charles Finch on yesterday, and so I asked the question of Charles Finch about the Dogon. He said, let me cut to the chase now. He said, they left Egypt in 550 AD with the knowledge that they have. He said
550 AD.
550, this is what he said, 550 AD. It was wasn't a discussion, it was a short, right at the end of the program. He said 550 AD. He said they're the only African nation that left Egypt and kept the rituals and the knowledge intact.
Amen.
He said, I've been to their land.
Right.
He said, which is 123 miles up into the mountains. He said, I've seen the ceremonies, I've seen their drawings in the sand.
Right.
You know, Charles Finch is not someone who just went there and came back. He's made the Dogon a study, and anyone interested can listen to him or see him on YouTube. You know, and some of the presentations are very good in terms of audio, others kind of distant. But the fact of the matter is, Dr. Charles Finch, that's what he shared.
Okay.
From my vantage point, it is important for black people to know that we are the source of knowledge. As Sister Kenya just said, we were asleep, and we have been asleep.
Right.
However, for the awake, I think you said for the awake, the discussion of the Dogon, maybe you said it before we went on, the discussion of the Dogon is for the awake.
Right.
And what that means, those who are not awake to the knowledge of who black people really are, once they hear a program like this, they got to search.
Right.
Okay, what direction it goes in. You got to know and have a knowledge of self. So the Dogon, I first heard about him through Ivan Van Sertima. He gave a presentation up at the church, First World Lecture Series. That's a whole nother story about the value, and Youngblood did some of the same thing over in
St. Paul
St.
Community
Paul's.
Baptist. Yeah.
Slave theater as well.
The Ma'at, wait a minute.
The Martha.
Yeah,
Dr. Finch used to lecture
Dr.
at our
Finch used
church
to, right.
back in the early 90s.
Youngbloods. Wow.
bringing
and
knowledge.
with Johnny Ray Youngblood.
Yeah.
Bringing knowledge.
It was Dr. Finch, Ivan Van Sertima, this brother that's on the news now, the big heavyset brother.
Oh, not Umar.
No,
Omar Johnson.
he's got a fantastic vocabulary. You know, his wife is a preacher. She's Republican. He's Democratic.
Dyson?
Dyson.
Dyson.
Michael Eric Dyson.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my
Right.
God.
We had
He's talking about Georgetown's finest. That's Dr. Georgetown
we had
finest.
Cornel West,
He's at
Michael
Georgetown.
Eric Dyson, Ivan Van Sertima.
Yeah.
We had everybody coming into
Dyson.
St. Paul in the early
Yeah.
90s.
Because of
And
Ma'afa.
Johnny Ray was pumping
Ma'afa.
that knowledge and the Ma'afa.
Yeah,
I
that's
was in the
why.
first production of the mantra. I
Oh,
think
I
it
saw
was
Welcome,
you.
Graham Weatherspoon, to the
Oh,
show.
welcome, Mr.
This is-
Weatherspoon. How do you do?
This is Sister
Sister
Kenya,
Kenya,
very nice to meet you.
Professor of
Kenya.
Pearson,
Yeah.
and associates of Professor Jeffrey.
Yes, of course, good.
The great and only infamous.
But we
Dr.
had
Larry
that
Jeffrey.
in Richmond. Johnny Ray brought that in the early 90s.
He was a gift.
The motto was, the way out is back through.
Yes.
Understood.
And the Sankofa bird looking
That's
back.
right,
You've
that's
got
right.
to go back
That's right. That's
to
right.
To
know
wake up.
and learn your history,
Absolutely.
to become aware of where you are and how you got to that place.
Indeed,
Not so much that you progress to it, but the fact is that's where you are.
That's right.
And you need to understand how it is that you're there. Because if you don't understand how you wound up where you are, you have no idea where you're going, and you're going to fall back into the same trap that probably got you where you are. A lot of our people don't understand what we're in or why it is and all of this, because we don't go back and study the history. And we don't understand the traps. And
right.
history was my major, and it's
Come
so
on.
critical. Math and history are critical
Come on,
to
you
your
love it.
existence. You know,
You eat it up.
if you don't know, Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. My grandmother told me, boy, I had platform shoes back in 1920 when I came to this country. You know, she said, and she was a dressmaker. She said history repeats itself. Clothing and style repeats itself. There are but so many things you can do with a pair of shoes and a suit, a tie, whatever. So if we don't look back and see and understand what happened in 1000 AD, 1000 BC, 5000 BC, if we don't understand the progression of a people, you can't understand how they got where they are. And we cannot afford to keep making the same mistakes.
Indeed.
Well, I don't know if you're prepared to run the second DVD. I mean the second
DVD.
roll-in on the Dogons. Are you prepared, Bev?
Yeah, I'm prepared.
Can you set it up, or do I need to come back? Okay. All right.
She said, please come.
Oh, all right.
You could bring that bio
right.
for,
Okay.
just so I could put it back in there.
We'll continue.
Yeah, right.
Just carry on.
What
yeah,
Youngblood,
we're
what
happy
Youngblood
to.
has done,
Yeah.
So I don't
Oh, what he,
First World Lecture Series
that was ordered.
Oh, you're right.
and other lecture series, very small. They
Right.
they actually operate below radar.
They do, they're supposed to, because if they would have been killed otherwise,
Oh, we had
they would have shut that church down.
we had various threats. I was in charge of the
Absolutely.
security at the church.
I went there
No,
in
that's the
201. I
second
know you would have
Oh,
been
I,
killed.
201,
Look, how do you get this?
I was still there. And
Oh, you have to hit these two. Okay.
we had bomb threats.
Absolutely.
We had
Put up
threats
the-
against speakers who were coming
put
in,
that-
even
put
white
that
speakers
on,
who were
then
coming. There was a
click
guy that
right
did the people of the Caucasus Mountains, a white guy, and he
Click
said that
green to bring it
the most
forward.
violent people on the earth
Right.
are
Then
Caucasians.
you
Right, came
put
out of the
that on.
cave.
And he did a serious lecture on why they were.
And he was a white man.
A white
You know how to
He
bring
was
up
talking
the
about his own
audio?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
when the threats came in, the 75th precinct said,
Help
well,
us do this rolling.
you know, we're here if you need us. I said, that's okay. We're not even going to call you if anything happens. We're going to take care of it.
We'll take care of it. And he meant, yeah,
Nothing happened.
And
nothing could happen.
we had issues
Truth
with
always
some
takes care
gang
of
members in
itself.
the area that came into property one day, and we told them, we ain't calling the police, and we're not calling an ambulance for you either. You
That
will
was
die in
Youngblood.
here. We told them.
But take a look at
But-
the name, Young Blood.
Youngblood.
Had Young Bloods around him, no Crips, just Bloods.
Just
And it
Bloods.
was its own gang.
We took 1,054 men
I was
to the
there.
Million Man March
Absolutely.
when we went
I
down.
remember because I financed somebody's check. Somebody that needed a, a
Right.
sandwich or something.
Right.
But that's
So-
right.
Where's this revolution
Cornell
today?
West was also
Where's
there.
this revolution today?
Well, Johnny Youngblood has left that particular St. Paul's.
He
but
went
the-
to Mount Pisgah,
Yeah.
and now he's opening another church
Yeah.
in Queens.
Because you see assignments, that's like somebody joining a mosque and then thinking they're just going to sit there till they die. That's what people do now in the churches. The pastor will sit there until his birthday of death. I mean, his birthday arrived when he opened it, but there are things that need to be done in different hemispheres. And I remember when Reverend Youngblood left, he went into a deeper part of Bedford-Stuyvesant area, and by the armory there, where homeless men were by the millions. And I said, if he's a leader of men, then let him go to his new audience, because St. Paul, I use this, and I want you to just connect. I just want to connect this sort of epiphanically. St. Paul had been an apostle, right?
Right.
Of the
Right.
great Christ.
Right.
St. Paul had been risen
Right.
from the dead. So
Okay.
if there was a story about rising from the dead, Youngblood's
interesting.
job was to find these gentlemen and get it out of death. And then his job was to go back to another group because there are special men who can lead. And he found another assignment. I remember
Right.
running into him at making a purchase in Brooklyn, and he said, I remember you. I said, because when I arrived to see your ma'afa, they tried to sit me in the back, and I almost went on stage to sit. I said, this is my ma'afa. I came there to sit on stage and to take my Gullah, South Carolinian roots through a special
Gullah,
place.
okay.
Yeah.
I said, I didn't come here to see a show. I came here to feel every ancestor that y'all are gonna call up. And so they came and said, have a seat back here. I almost sat on the stage, but they were polite enough to get somebody out of the first seat in the first row. And I sat there, and I went through the ma'afa. And that was the best performance of ma'afa, so much so that when it was over, Dr. Youngblood said, we've been doing ma'afa, but today we did it with the originals. And you were in that production. And that's, I didn't know you
That-
then,
Let's
but he
talk
was
a
in
little
that
bit
production.
about your spiritual healing purpose here on the planet and being a Dogon.
Oh, okay. So let's clarify
talk about the
something.
Dogons.
I think it's important to clarify something. Dogons are the beings whom respected the original order given by the divine of which they spawn. They were perfect beings. We are not, but they truly were made in the perfection of the divine. So they ordered themselves, because you have to understand, this is Dr. J 101. There was indeed a time when the motherland never had ice, but because there was an icing age, there was a drying age in the mother. Again, how did the motherland before this word Africa get to this place? So I want to talk to you from my soul. I want you to understand, as I say this very deeply, we are the children of the mothership that landed to this earth for right purpose, but we have to choose. So when we went to sleep, I always like to use 10,000 years ago, because that's all we can go back to is Kemet. But we have to remember that the Nile Valley, this is taught by all the great scholars of the Nile Valley. The Nile Valley comes from Dr. Yosef Ben Yekin's world, comes from that place that once they called Abyssinia, which is Ethiopia in the words used today. Again, wordsmith. I'm very careful about words. I like Abyssinia because it has a meaning. But the flow of the Nile begins there. And populations obviously are going to go where rivers don't dry up. So it flowed into the Nile Valley and went into Kemet. So the original concept 10,000 years ago was that we could find our essence if we started in what is known as the East. If we started in the East, we would never have contracted the beast, because it was the beast that found a way to give us an adoption into other things other than our perfection. We were adopted their religious ideologies. We adopted their eating habits, unlike our own. We adopted their cultural ritual, unlike our own. But when the archaeologists of their nation began to dig, they found the first living human fossil, and it was 3 million years old. They named her Lucy. We call her Mother. But she was an example of an upright being who had been placed on the continent, because that's how I refer to the
And they
mother.
found her in Abyssinia or Ethiopia.
They found her in the connection between Kenya that touches Ethiopia, because
Okay.
when you're coming out of Ethiopia, you can rub your elbow in Kenya.
Okay.
But all of these are right. Again, there was no Kenya, there was no Ethiopia.
Right.
There was simply the mother.
Right.
And they found her 3.5 million years, and she's walking upright and cooking her. This is not anybody. This is an original Dogon. If you understand these incredible beings, they moved across the earth because the tectonic plates hadn't separated continents at the level of which they're separated now.
Okay.
The tectonic plates started separating the continents, right? And so we ended up with a India in another space and a Peru in another space, South America, North America. The continents were walkable because you only had to cross rivers. Now we cross oceans. But, you know, I don't want to get so deep that I don't explain the healing part of this. So I was asleep. So you were asleep. So all of us went to sleep. Our grandparents had to wake up from their sleep in a nightmare because they were captured by an enemy, living in an enemy's country, and being forced to take care of an enemy. This is a deeper thing. This is a deeper thing. So the question becomes, how did we lose the mother? Why did we lose the mother? And how could we, who created civilization from its essence, be conquered by any enemy? And the answer is simple. We made choices that were imperfect.
I mean, it's in our nature to be loving and giving.
Still to this day, honestly,
To this day.
you can find a person of motherland descent and you can actually bite them and they will bleed and say that was painful. But if you're hungry, they'll figure out how to get you to the kitchen and give you something to eat. Because they'll say, you were that hungry, you will bite me? Well, let me get in this kitchen and make some chicken and get some collard green. Because I imagine you, and that is the essence.
What is that?
It's the essence of who we are, because as parents, you got to get to the original human being. As parents, we have an onus over this planet.
Okay.
And that's essentially it. If you know that you're the parent and you have bad children, you don't always want to throw them out with the bathwater. You want to figure out, well, I have this really terrible, horrible son, but I got 6 sons and they're all so good, but then I got this one.
So Trump is a foolish child.
Well, he's obviously the baby that never left home, because his intellectual stimuli is that of a 3rd grader. I don't know, he keeps claiming he went to Ivy League. I happen to have stepped in Ivy. You don't really step in Ivy ignorant. And you certainly can't come out dumb. You know, so I always say money buys people many prestigious things. And if your father had $450 million when you were 13, I imagine you could have walked in and bought any university. But at the end of the day, could you come out more literate than when you went in? If you didn't go in, if you went into college in the 2nd grade, you probably came out on the 4th grade at the 4th grade level, because they don't teach that ignorance. There really is nobody available in these institutions to teach you out of the 4th grade, if that's how you walked in. But your check might decide that I don't have to teach you.
Well, isn't that a problem?
I mean, listen, in any professorship, somebody will come to you called deans and say, leave that one alone. And if your job is secure, you'll say, absolutely. Is the idiot going to sit in the front of my class or the back of my class? Because it really won't make a difference. The grade was already delivered. So I'm not involved in him. I only listen to him from one position. A very, very lost, hateful child, angry at the fact that we arrived. His difficulty, and the difficulty of all of the white right, is that we arrived in their White House. That disturbed them more than anything.
Right.
I don't think they were angry. I think they figured out that we were kind of going to move, but we walked in Benjamin Banneker's 55 by 55 by 55 square and took the house. That was the disturbance. We have been in all their houses giving our milk away, cleaning up the kitchen, right, bowing and scraping. How dare us go into George Washington's house and deliver it from
we
iniquity.
Built it. I mean,
well, I always tell it, Benjamin Banneker was there. They wouldn't have got anything done until he decided to give them a square to put it in. It's their center. Our center is the universe.
All right, let's go to the Dogons for a minute. just to show.
I forgot about the left.
I'm so excited
We're
about
all,
this.
we're all descendants anyway.
Indeed.
All right. So can you play the Dogons, just to give the audience a little view of what we're talking about?
Wake them up. Wow.
Oh, this is Malcolm.
Oh, she went to Malcolm. Oh, I never leave home without him.
I
You
was
know
with
that, right?
a friend years ago in the Turks and Caicos.
Is that the one I put in?
Yeah.
What's the
Stafford
sound?
Missick. He has since passed, gone on.
Wait.
But he said that
Okay, the sound is up.
we are coming into, there's been a paradigm shift.
Absolutely, there it is.
And
We can talk about that.
Young
That's
blood,
real.
we would talk about this at St. Paul, the paradigm shift. And they're still reluctant to acknowledge it because they're fighting to hold on. But as you see, the browning of America, Stafford said, about 10, 15 years ago,
Take it down. Take it down. Take it down.
Stafford said that God was going to restore us to our rightful place.
Absolutely.
And we need to be prepared
Put a
for
picture up.
leadership.
Right.
Put something up here.
We need to be focused on learning,
Put them.
acquiring not just knowledge, but
Camera three.
wisdom. Because the earth is going to rely upon us to save it from all of the assaults that have been going on the planet, ecologically, economically, politically.
Absolutely.
So
That's in-
we
that's incredible.
really have to get our act together as the parent. We see parenting is lacking on all levels.
On all levels,
Put
indeed.
this up. Put this
So
up.
when it comes back, I was doing
Put this
myself and another
While they're talking.
brother did a
Yeah.
presentation at a church in Bed-Stuy, Land.
366 symbols given without meaning.
Oh, here they go. He went to
Dogon with
the
Charles
Malian.
Yeah, take
These
it
are the
down.
And preserving the information for future generations. The symbols reveal an astonishing scope of astronomical knowledge, an infinite number of stars and spiraling worlds. After more than 5 years among the Dogon people, Dr. Guggenheim has gradually gained the confidence of the Dogon elders and acceptance into the inner circle of secret knowledge.
The Dogon believe the universe was born in a vast explosion, and as it opened up, everything that we know about and everything that the Dogon know about in the world came pouring out, and nothing was left except a shell. This empty shell became the star that they call the Pontolo, and that we call Sirius B.
In 1950, astronomers confirmed the existence of the Dogon star. At the United States Naval Observatory, Washington, D.C., Chief Astronomer Dr. Irving Lindenblad devoted years to the search for the dark star.
The Sirius system is a very interesting challenge observationally because it is very difficult to observe a star 10 seconds from such a bright object as Sirius A.
After the years of effort, Dr. Lindenblad finally succeeded in taking this photograph of Sirius B and its giant companion. The Dogon possess even more startling information about the star they hold sacred. They say that when it gave forth all its energy, it collapsed in upon, becoming incredibly dense and so heavy that all the earthly beings combined cannot lift it. The San Fernando Observatory, Sylmar, California. Dr. Gary Chapman is an astronomer specializing in the physical characteristics of stars. By splitting the light collected from a distant star into colored bands, its physical characteristics can be analyzed.
Sirius B is fairly normal in the surface layers, but we do rely on the calculations to tell us that the interior is essentially out of nuclear fuel. It's a dead star. We know from modern calculations that it has a very, very high density, has a density about 5 million times that of water, and if you were to be on the surface of Sirius B right now, you'd be crushed very, very flat, because the surface gravity is about 100 million times that of the Earth.
The symbol is explained. The knowledge preserved in rituals through the centuries has been confirmed. Beyond the Dogon knowledge of the dark star, the symbols reveal more information about the celestial universe. They correctly place the Earth and our solar system within the Milky Way, and state correctly that the massive cluster of stars is far more distant than the planets. The understanding of astronomical movements led the Dogon to investigate the human anatomy. They discovered the circulation of blood in the body long before it was discovered by the English physician William Harvey in the 17th century. These symbols and the knowledge they hold are the legacy of the mysterious Numos, the messengers from the dark star. Many cultures claim their knowledge was given them by godlike beings descended from the heavens. But the Dogons insist their gods descended from one star in particular, which they're able to identify and describe in detail. Does other evidence exist of this encounter between gods and
I said, no question that the Enterprise, the Starship Enterprise, Dr. Spock would be explaining it, because he probably is a member of the club.
You know?
He's probably
I
one of the
thought that was
awakened children. Well, he's
You know,
been...
I saw this in the 70s when this first came out, when I first read the Serious Mystery. So this is like going back in history.
25 years ago.
Yeah, back
But
in
Leonard
the day.
Nimoy would be the one to do
Yeah,
it, because he
right.
was the, because he was considered an alien on the Starship
right.
Enterprise.
That's right.
I think he had met a few. But I think what it did for him is, as probably, you know, on a spiritual level, it was touching the pieces of his internal man that knew that he wasn't on the Enterprise for the movie's sake, but he was on the Enterprise to tell us a true story. So I think that when that career was no longer necessary, he would get out and speak truth to life. And heal himself, as prodigal children have to be healed on a very serious level.
I'm glad you got that much out of it. You know, the point of, you know, we have a lot of doubting Thomases about where the Dogons got this knowledge. We've had several shows, and, well, Professor Jeffries being the biggest doubting Thomas about where the Dogons got their knowledge. And they state here that they got it from the Nomos.
Well, you see,
beings from the Serious Mystery.
from the Serious Mystery.
In the opening piece, you saw that the gods of Sirius, which were, you know, the ancient Egyptians. In other words, in the Serious Mystery, they claim that this is the beginning of creation, the circular orbit of A, B, and C in Sirius. This cyclical, or on the side of infinity, they form an orbit of infinity.
I think that it's important to gather, you know, this is high science, right?
Okay.
And of course, we're talking about a people who 360 BC,
Okay.
their science was much higher than the Egyptians we talk about of Kemet.
Okay.
Let's face it, they were mummifying, and they were doing rituals that we still don't understand today.
Okay.
But their common knowledge of the physical body in order to wrap a body that could sustain for 10,000 years tells you that those individuals in Kemet had an understanding. Remember, the adulteration of our culture has been progressive
Yep.
to the point of having to leave the mother and go to the North American hemisphere, the Caribbean hemisphere, and to populate the South American hemisphere to regain some of this.
Okay.
And I think that it's important to understand from a healing point of view that if the ancient Egyptians of 10,000 years ago knew anything in high science, it's only because their parents taught it to them.
Okay.
And what Leonard Nimoy is actually talking about, and it's interesting that his last name is Leonard Nimoy. I always say this because they call them Nemos. They call these beings, and they call them aquatic beings, meaning that there was water. But then let's talk about Earth. Earth, if we understand it today, is over half percentage of it is water, and it's becoming more. Right. And we, as beings that are alive, are 3/4 of water. So if there was a water being, it's because water is the essence of life.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
We're talking about California fires. They're looking for water to take care of that.
That's
okay? But water is the essence of life. So Mother Earth at one time was water. So it wouldn't have been difficult for something in the universe to come to the water place because it is aquatic. But in the development to become this, I would consider, smaller thinking being from our higher parent, the Lucys of the world, the original mothers and fathers of the world were given this great gift of this planet dry. And then purpose would be to seek, and the search would be for education, elevation, and new knowledge. But the knowledge would actually be, as our dear brother was saying, it would be really old. It wouldn't be born. You wouldn't be born again. You would be reborn into truth if it were forgotten. But it's within. It again is for the living. Those who are among us who refuse to awaken, they just haven't arrived on that journey.
How do we
yet.
approach that problem to make people more awake?
Well, I know Like It Is did it for me. It may have. I was, devout, being a devout Christian living in another state. I had to awaken to find the Christ in me, and that's why I love your name so much. Christ is simply the word anointing, and I call you Brother Christ because you're doing your job to the masses of people to awaken those who are seeking. But there are a lot of people on the planet not seeking. Number 45 is not seeking. What are they seeking? They're seeking more power, more things, more things to hide where? In Swiss accounts? At the end of the day, this is what caused the mother to be taken. There is iniquity in the continent now by leaders who want more things and forgot about the parenting that needs to be done in the position of leadership. And that is why I so respond to the Obamas returning into that White House and becoming excellent parents. They became excellent parents and overseers of this nation because black men and black women are the parents of the globe. And they walked in there to remind us. And I just to connect it spiritually, just like when I met Brother Baylor, there was going to be a connection that would be for life because he was on a journey through a radio show. In fact, Brother Baylor brought me to a radio show back in the early 2000s after we met. I had a radio show called Confess Your Stress. And what was I really trying to do? I was, as a psychologist, just trying to get people to talk about what it is that troubles you. Because if we can get to your trouble, maybe we can get you to live in practice principles, values, and virtues again. Because our parents lived principally with values and with purpose. That is the perfect triangle. That is the perfect
Is that the part
pyramid.
of the spiritual healing?
Yeah, to live in those three things gets rid of war, hatred, jealousy, all the 7 sins of the Bible. You would eliminate at least, if you couldn't get all of them gone, you get rid of 5, you'd be halfway there, right? So to eliminate the you that's in the way of the better you, which our parents were, you've got to eliminate what all of Europe did to your psychology, was to destroy your integrity, your counsel internally, your understanding of why it is that you feel such strong compassion even for those who hate you. Why is it we have this?
I was watching, I saw 2 documentaries in the last week. Ironically, they were both about Native Americans. And one was in the state of Maine. They did a reconciliation. In the early 50s, they took Native American children away from their parents to be raised by white families. The same was done in Australia years ago.
Absolutely, the Aboriginal
when they took the
people.
Aborigines. They both went through the same dynamics. The suffering. There was a woman there crying. She said, "I've never cried in my life." She said, but I'm crying now because I realize what they did to me. I feel stripped of who I am. I'm not a white woman. I am a native." And she named a tribe. And they were all tribes people. And when you're stripped of your very essence and being, it's like a round peg, square hole, and they're trying to fit you in to be something you're not. Our entire approach to community, to the planet is different. But in seeing those 2 documentaries, it was very distressing to know that these are not isolated moments. The same thing is going on today with Spanish-speaking children near the Texas border.
Absolutely.
There is a spirit of evilness in the people with power, and we have to call it for what it is, because they are infecting the planet. They themselves become infected.
Right.
All right? Power infects the one with the power.
Right.
And the victims of that power become abused. Nobody wins. The country can't move forward, will not move forward, until we realize the value in every human being.
Absolutely.
The greatest natural resource a nation has is its people.
Absolutely.
Not gold, silver, platinum, but in its people. But I'm thinking about these little children, these little boys and girls in these detention centers who've been taken from their mothers and fathers. Some who have been victimized by pedophiles already. What damage is that going to bring? See, because it's generational. You're creating a generational curse. These children are going to grow up to be somebody. They're not going to grow up to really want to be an ambassador or some.
They're going to populate the industrial complex. They do these things as they did to the Aboriginals in Australia
You need a
to
prison
be able to
industrial
create the prison industrial complex, which is another moneymaker.
Right.
If your principle is money, you find ways to begin the process.
That's true.
Right? So
That's
you
what's
have
happened.
to take the children in order to guarantee, because let's face it, there appear to be awakening. Parents were clear on one thing during the 8 years of the Obamas. These people will shoot my son down in the ground and make an excuse for it. I thank God for
On video.
On video, and thank God for the Obamas, because they had a Mr. Holder.
Yep.
Mr. Holder, being the Attorney General, unlike Sessions, was deliberately interested in Ferguson. But he got interested in Ferguson after Obama's son. I always say Obama's son because after what happened in Florida to Trayvon, you could very well say it was time to make a statement. And I think that our president, Barack Obama, said it best. That could have been my son. And he was saying that, okay, guys, somebody has given you the whistle, blow him away. But I want it to be understood that I'm going to send in Holder. And I love him with all my heart because he went in on a mission and totally dismantled the entire Ferguson system from the head down, to show you the power of the black man, a father, a parent, when he decides that the children have gone astray, stepping into his mission and completing the task. I think that is the greatest gift that the original man has, is that he can find his mission and be willing to die to complete his task. Spiritually, he's healed and returns
the
to
spiritual healing comes from us not becoming bitter
Well, I think
and
it's deeper
feeding
than that.
system
But see,
poison.
here's where bitterness comes from. It's from the ignorance of not understanding how you lost your house. If you walk into my house and say, I'm going to put all my clothes here and I'm going to put my furniture here, and I'm standing there and I didn't invite you.
Right.
I didn't invite you, and you just walked into my home because you knocked and I said, okay, who's there? You said, well, open the door, and I was polite enough to open it, and you move your furniture, clothing, and your property in my house and say, okay, this is my house now. And I go along with that. Now, I don't say to you, sorry, I believe you lost your mind. I think I need to call someone. Maybe you are a member of the Bellevue community. Whatever it is, something's wrong with you. But to be able to say, okay, this okay happened when we lost Kemet.
The invasion of Africa.
The invasion of Africa was knock on the door, welcome, right? The Native Americans lose America with a knock on the door, and they say welcome.
That's because of our temperament. You know, they go throughout the planet doing the same thing.
Because what is our temperament? Parents. Yeah. Parents say to their children, are you outside? You're tired? You want to come in? All right, well, come on in, take a bath. Let me give you something to eat. This is who we are.
You mentioned it before. With the leadership in Africa, they're not Africans. They're born there, but they're not African. They've been totally brainwashed and Europeanized in their thinking. I remember when I was in the Gambia with Yahya Jammeh, he said my neighbor next door thinks he's French because he speaks French and he wants a white wife.
Absolutely.
He said, Weatherspoon, if I had 10 men like you, we could change the continent. And right now, the second rape of Africa is going on with the Chinese.
They're the new rapists.
The Chinese have been in there for the last 10 years.
Doing their thing.
And they're doing more damage than the Europeans did.
Absolutely.
And they only bring their own into work. They don't employ. Don't go to these Chinese restaurants and eat that food, that garbage. They don't employ black people. They will build in Africa, but they will bring their people to do the construction. They will then settle in your country and seek to marry into people in your country to obtain the land of your country. Zimbabwe right now has their currency backed 100% in gold because of the Chinese.
But they have a plan. They're overpopulated. You know, The Hunger Games was a book?
Yeah.
The Hunger Games is China. People kept trying to figure out, where in the world is this really happening? I said, when I read the book, this is China.
Aren't the Indians doing the same thing?
No, the Chinese don't have enough people.
Okay.
Their population.
They don't have enough planet.
They restricted the population. You could not have more than 1.2 children for a number of years, and they realized that as their population aged out, they didn't have the young people to fill the gap. That's one part of it.
Right, and you're absolutely right.
They've now, through the use, we were playing war games in the Middle East, and China was buying gold across the globe. They have more gold than anybody right now, and their currency is backed in gold.
And they're communists, right?
Right.
Right, and they're communists. So you ask yourself, isn't communist about sharing the wealth and the people
From each
and the
according
purpose?
to his ability, and to each according to his need.
Right. But there is the historian, right? History major. But let's take a look at that. The population explosion of China to one American is 10 Chinese. At one time, it was more. It was closer to 15. They depopulated because they had population control. They didn't order birth control. They just if you had 2 children, one of them was murdered because you weren't allowed to have more than 2. So 2 was the limit. Everybody, because they had population control, but it didn't stop them from running out of land. It didn't stop them from running out of food because, again, the reality of spiritual law says that for every action, there is going to be a cause. So that's a principle. I teach the original 4 great natural laws. One of the very first laws is the simple story of as a man soweth, so shall he reap, but we say it this way. We say it as that for every single action you take, there's a repercussion. The Chinese took the action of overpopulating their planetary area, And they couldn't move beyond, because certainly they knew if they go into India under its British control, they end up in a war with Britain.
Right.
Great Britain draws other countries because it's the great god of Europe. So they made a decision. And they made a decision in this century because they said these people that are leading this new world called Africa are all about themselves. So we'll go in and do exactly what Mr. Witherspoon said. And this is what they do. Knock, and they bring a couple of trinkets, and there's a leader that says, welcome. Not, why are you coming to my house, but welcome to my house. People were having a fit about what was going on in Zimbabwe when they were throwing the farmers off the land. That's nobody's land except the people who live there. That's a land law.
That's right.
That's an original law. The land belongs to its citizens. You don't get to. The land is, so these are 4 great natural laws. There's a land law, there's a freedom law, and then there's a time law. I teach all 4 of them in my original spirituality classes. And I teach them to graduate students because you have to take enough philosophy to even take these courses. But what's important about knowing about the 4 great natural laws, which, thank God for Brother Baylor, I was able to put over the air when I was doing spiritual healing and Confess Your Stress. I introduced Brother Baylor to the laws, and he saw the laws. His wisdom, his intelligence, and his eldership said, you need a radio show.
What I remember was your guidance in doing 10 good deeds a day.
Absolutely. Remember that? Yeah.
10 good deeds a day.
10 good deeds a day.
Good deeds a day. That puts you in
Period.
harmony with your own spirit, our giving spirit. And in the Quran, Surah 107 is acts of kindness. Now that's in the Quran, but you go into the Bible, you get the same thing.
Right.
So spiritual healing, when you look at it, it has to be looked at in the context of where we are. We're in the Western world, white supremacy. White supremacy means that we come with their mindset. We measure things physically and mentally, but the component is mental, physical, and spiritual. So where you find a lot of Africans going, having mental problems, is because, I'm talking about Africans, they become disconnected with their spiritual piece.
Right.
But they're treated in the West as though they have a mental problem when it's really a spiritual imbalance. And last but not least, you asked the question earlier, how do you deal with this consciousness, lack of consciousness among black people? Black people have to expose themselves to knowledge and information. Black people are not reading newspapers and magazines. They're not reading black newspapers, and they're not reading black magazines.
And with that, the God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned, more spiritual energy.
I love that. It's feminine
with
too.
spiritual energy.
Male and female.
All right, we got another minute for the Prof.
There's another thing, and that is when you talk about them taking the children away. That's happening right here in home.
You're right.
Foster care.
ACS.
So-called foster care.
ACS.
Bogus reasons for coming in and taking someone's child, and then you got to prove that you didn't do anything to your child.
Yeah, we have
Another
to-
way they have is giving your child, convincing you to give your child Ritalin. And that separates the child from you in the home. You don't have the same child. Where's those children now? They're on 125th Street and Lexington Avenue. Homeless.
And the video games can be another distraction. And the music.
And tell the
That's
child that
insidious.
they should call the police on the parent.
Yeah, but that was when policing decided to raise our children.
And we
There
don't
you
raise
have it
children.
Again, knock on the door, give me what you want,
Again,
and
the
I say
God
come
in me
in.
loves the God in you. And stay tuned for more spiritual.